Hello everyone, my name is Francis Navarro, Professor of Geography from the University of Granada. It is a pleasure to share with all of you these pills about sustainable tourism. In this case, the topic of this one is about tourism planning in natural and protected areas. Enjoy it.
The main characteristics of ecotourism are oriented towards conservation, establishing a symbiotic relationship between protected natural areas and tourist activity. It has an educational function, discovering natural reality, developing in natural areas, especially in protected areas, helping to develop precarious rural economies, offering low environmental impact, careful with nature and the local population. The participation of the local population in the tourist offer is also an essential condition for its proper functioning. Finally, it is promoted and regulated by the administration through the policy of national parks and natural parks. Definitively, ecotourism is defined as a responsible travel to natural areas that conserves the environment, respects local cultures, and promotes sustainability. It focuses on experiencing natural environments while contributing to the conservation of habitats and the welfare of local communities. Key principles of ecotourism include minimizing environmental impact, generating financial benefits for conservation, and fostering respect for different cultures and ecosystems. The International Ecotourism Society (TIES) defines ecotourism as responsible travel to natural areas that conserves the environment and improves the well-being of local people. Tourism planning in protected natural areas refers to the strategic process of managing tourism activities within regions that are designated to conserve natural and cultural resources. This planning aims to balance ecological preservation with the economic benefits of tourism, ensuring that natural habitats and cultural heritage are protected while providing opportunities for visitor enjoyment and education. Key components of tourism planning in these areas typically include: firstly, the resource assessment, evaluating the natural and cultural resources that attract visitors; visitor management, developing strategies to manage visitor access and behaviors, maintaining the integrity of the environment; sustainable practices, implementing practices that minimize environmental impact and promote conservation; stakeholder engagement, involving local communities, government agencies, and other stakeholders in the planning process; monitoring and evaluation, continuously assessing the impacts of tourism and adapting management strategies accordingly; enhancement and exploitation for tourism purposes. Public use of different areas of natural interest depends on environmental legislation, materialized through specific plans for the protection of each area. Requires a set of equipment, hardware, and services, software, that are developed by specialized personnel, guide, interpreter, educator, technician, etc. Regulation of tourism activities. Finally, the role of local communities to offer ecotourist services. To regulate the tourism activities in each natural area, this planning establishes management criteria, objectives, and actions to develop each activity while defining the possibilities and tourist modalities for each environmental unit delimited within the protected area. Definitively, the development of tourist activity cannot be a threat to the landscape or biodiversity, the conservation of wild flora and fauna and their habitat. The regulation of tourist use must be respected, as well as the rules and guidelines for public use contained in their respective plans. The main aspects to consider in tourism planning in natural areas are: firstly, the fragility or vulnerability of the geographical spaces of protected areas, understood as the inability to absorb the effects of the change generated by the process of tourist use, with the deterioration of environmental quality, considering the focal resources, the tourist potential, predisposition of its environmental quality to accommodate a tourist recreational use based on its characteristics without a significant loss, the tourist carrying capacity, degree of suitability of a certain tourist recreational activity, taking into account the dimensions, physical, ecological, psychological, or social, number of simultaneous visitors that a protected area can accommodate without detriment to its environmental quality and the recreational experience. There is no magic number. Finally, the zoning, division of the protected area based on the vocation and fragility of the resulting zones, different levels of tourist use. You can observe, as a general rule, the following different areas inside of a protected area. Firstly, strict protection areas, or sanctuaries where the passage of people is prohibited; reserve areas, areas, wild areas, which can only be accessed on foot, tourist areas, where visitors can carry out various activities. They must contain representative samples of the important resources of the space that allow visitors to learn about them. They are further divided into extensive use areas, where low-intensity recreational use is permitted. Intensive use areas. They cover a small area where visitors are concentrated. Most services are located there: paved roads, visitor centers, camping grounds, etc. Finally, urbanized areas, where the facilities are located. Also, these natural areas must be integrated in a protected areas system to guarantee their working and the suitable coordination with others' territorial and sectorial plans through protected areas, buffer zones, and biological connections. In the figure 2, you can see the zoning in Sierra de las Nieves Natural Park, where the strict protection areas coincide with the presence of Andalusian fir, Abies pin sapo. 3 criteria for the tourism planning in protected areas must be considered. Firstly, the valorization of resources and structuring of tourist products. Secondly, the information. And thirdly, planning and management. Let us go to explain these further. The valorization of resources and structuring of tourist products allows the valorization of natural and cultural heritage. It ensures the contribution of tourism activity to the socio-economic development of the protected area and its area of influence. Attractions, natural environment and its ecological, geological, cultural, and landscape values. Activities, those based on knowledge, interpretation, and enjoyment of natural and cultural values, will be prioritized. Finally, it creates different experiences that induce responsible behavior on the part of tourists, preferring those of a contemplative nature. In the second place, information, which is essential for raising awareness among visitors and for enjoying the recreational and tourist experience. Developing imaginative solutions. It must be accompanied by environmental content regarding environmentally responsible behavior and consumption patterns from local tourism offices, visitor centers, and information points. It is possible to enable private establishments to develop information functions in order to make up for the lack of this service and facilitate the rapprochement between local companies and institutions and the management of the protected area. In some natural parks, their strategic touristic plans are focused on the improvement of the information of the park, that is Natural Park of Sierra de las Nieves, with a visitor center, informative material, or audiovisual material. And in third place, planning and engagement. The planning and management tools must consider. Firstly, the promotion of the participation of all tourism stakeholders and the local population. Public-private cooperation. Tourism administration must regulate active tourism, requirements to be met by companies. Conservation. Tools such as the evaluation of carrying capacity, limits of acceptable change, definition of sustainability indicators, environmental auditing, access control, entry requirements, and of course, environmental impact assessment studies must be applied. Finally, responsible practices, interpretation and information, environmental education and training, ethical codes of behavior and consumption aimed at tourists. On one hand, the reduction of impacts on ecotourism must include: firstly, the limitation of the number of visitors and conduct observations at a safe distance. Prohibit artificial feeding of animals. Prohibit the sale of souvenirs of fauna and that promote poaching. Hunting and fishing plan to avoid overexploitation. Limit the speed of vehicles. Infrastructures for observation as unnoticed as possible. Buildings and infrastructures must allow the movement of animals. Finally, the awareness campaigns among visitors, informing them of the negative impacts that they can cause on fauna. On the other hand, the reduction of impacts of active tourism in nature must contain: firstly, the reduction of vehicle traffic, especially heavy vehicles. Prevent private vehicles by means of physical obstacles. Signpost the paths perfectly and prohibit the use of shortcuts. Separate different paths according to each use. Pedestrians, maximum widths 1.3 meters, cycle paths 2 meters, and equestrians 3 meters. Avoid excessive concentrations of visitors. Locate recreational areas where the impacts are less. Avoid the use of large boats as much as possible. Limit the speed of boats. Maintain riverside vegetation. Require boats to sail away from the banks. Finally, the awareness campaigns among visitors. Thank you for joining us in exploring the tourism planning in natural and protected areas. See you soon. It was a pleasure. I am sharing my email if you want to send comments, doubts, or anything.